Well, hey, good morning and happy solstice to you. We're in the summer now. Finally in summer, we can officially call it, even though we've had 5, 6, 7 days in the 90s. Solstice is here, and cheers to you. Morning coffee. I was out here at 5 or 6 this morning, 5, to set the camera to do a time lapse of the sunrise because it was quite beautiful. But somebody forgot their charger and a full battery. So you're just gonna have to imagine how beautiful it is. Sounds like when we left Grand Marais that time and didn't get that beautiful sunrise. Seems to happen more often than not, sorry. Okay, it's already mid-morning, the wind is blowing, I don't have to do my golf talk, and I'm probably gonna do the video we put up today, which was filmed 2 weeks ago. I did a lot of voiceover kind of in between. It just worked out really nice, and I got a lot more information, so I didn't have to ramble at the beginning and at the end. So I'm only going to give you just a little bit here. Most of the day is going to be spent in the yard. We've got a lot of other yard work. The last big stump came out, and probably what's more important is we're hitting the point where the rejuvenation, I don't want to say is done, but most things have been planted. I'm gonna put some potatoes in the ground. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, it's way too late, but I still have them, want to put them in and just get a couple hills. The big cages, I'm gonna get 2 of the big cages on the big tomatoes, and the water line's gonna get fixed today. So there's a bunch of little things as we keep moving along in the garden. This is the time, and I probably will mention it like this video, last video, and the next video, that we're 10 weeks right now, 10 weeks away from when we said, hey, let's garden, let's start a garden this year, let's do that. And we've just had our, another 90-degree day. Somebody just asked us to go to the cabin for the weekend. Weddings are going to be really picking up here shortly, and life gets busy in the summer. And that excitement to get outside in spring in the garden, it doesn't wane, but it just gets a lot more competition. So staying on top of it, staying on top of the garden, not starting too big, keeping it easy, keeping things spaced out. And probably most importantly, what you'll see me doing in the video a lot, and when I come home during the week, I'll just come out here, grab my little hoe, and just hoe. So the more that you kind of loosen up the soil, break up the little weed seeds. We did have a really nice drenching rain this week, which means you can probably tell that the soil's a little bit darker. That's when the weed seeds go, hey, we can grow again. And if you just kind of keep loosening them up, they sprout and then they die. And that's how you slowly keep the garden looking nicer. And there's a point, I'm not sure exactly when, probably another 2, maybe 3 weeks, where you just don't have as much weed seed sprouting just up on the top, and then the garden stays and looks wonderful for the year. But it's always that little bit of maintenance that helps on that. So that's gonna be it. And there's Charlie and Archie walking the dog in the morning. Okay, let's get gardening. And who says gardening isn't therapeutic? It's wonderful to be out in the garden in the morning just hoeing. Yes, let's talk about hoeing a little bit. My favorite hoe right now, yeah, I know that sounds bad, is this. I don't even know where I get these tools. Most of my tools at home come from yard sales or auctions and are somebody else's old tool. This is a 3-tong digger on one side and then a flat cutting edge on the other side, which I think they refer to as a stirrup hoe. but it works really nice. So when I'm working inside those raised beds in the block and bluestone, you can just drag the hole right along the edge, gets it nice and clean. And like I'm doing on the tomatoes there, that the digger side, you can pull up and kind of loosen up the weeds. When you get to working on paths or other areas where you don't want to loosen the soil up quite as much, that's when you flip it over and that stirrup just kind of cuts the weeds off. Yeah, it may leave a few roots in place, but that's okay. So like if there's a dandelion popping up, I just keep chopping it off and slowly it will die, and keeps it nice and fresh in the walkway. Soon to be covered in pavers. Can't wait for that project to begin. But you can see how quickly and easy you can keep the garden looking halfway nice, especially inside those cells, the beds that I call them. Easy to rake around them or hoe around them and just kind of take care of that. Okay, the cucumbers are coming along quite nicely. I did have to replant some of the picklers on the other side, but they have sprouted again and on their way. The slicers over here are up. I added some straw from the straw bales just to keep the weeds down. The mulch is keeping the weeds down nicely here and just pulling as they come up. So you can start to see that the vines are starting to grow a little bit. And this is where I'll spend just a little bit of time helping them head this way. Here's our first little, you know what? I don't even know what that's called. The little thingamajigger that wraps around and holds on. So he's coming out, and I'll just keep lifting these up, and just so that as the vines grow, I will set them on top of the trellis and they will just start heading up. So pretty exciting as these things start to come up and move. So I did take the time to look up what those curly little things on a cucumber are called. They are not called tentacles, they are called tendrils. There you go. Now you learned something today. Call it a good day. Cages on the tomatoes and tomato pruning and all that. I did have a request to do a whole video just on how I prune tomatoes, maybe next year. So I'll give you a little bit here. So what you do need to know when you're talking tomatoes, there's two very simple categories. They're determinate or indeterminate. And that just means one's going to grow to a certain size and fruit at a certain time, and the other one will just keep growing. The indeterminate will just keep growing and putting on fruit until something causes it to die. In Minnesota, we call that frost. When they freeze, they will die. So there's little things you can do. So I am clipping and pruning on the indeterminate right now. Those are called the sun leaves, the big ones on the bottom. Simply what I like to do is get the leaves away from the soil. There's nematoids down in the soil, and they can cause all kinds of problems if you get wilt and blights and all those things. So if you don't want to get too complicated, just make sure none of your leaves touch the soil. And even when it's raining, that the soil doesn't splash up on the leaves. That's why I prune them up so high. The other thing is I collect all my leaves from my tomatoes, and I don't put them in the compost, and I don't leave them on the ground in the garden because I just don't want the disease to stay there. So I do remove those from sight, pull in the little weeds, and I'm always looking for, on indeterminates, you take the suckers, which are the little branches in between the axes. See what I mean? You can just get down in a huge big rabbit hole when you're growing tomatoes, and everyone has the secret on how to grow the best tomatoes. Pretty basic, I think. What I'm doing there with my little garden trowel is loosening up all the soil, and I had the original cage that I put on, which I say, creates that internal structure to hang on to fruit and helps push the vines, I shouldn't call them vines, the plants up. And this is actually concrete remesh, or concrete mesh that I rolled out and formed into round cages. So that's 60 inches tall, so 5 feet tall. So the tomato plants that are there, I think those are better boys. They can get 5 to 8 feet tall, and so this cage probably won't be enough for these tomatoes, but I will make one of those cages for each of the tomatoes on that side, or in that row, or in that cell when I get done there. And I don't overly stake those in. As long as they get kind of touched to the ground, they'll add some stability, and what they're there is to hang on to the fruit and just give it some overall structure to hold the tomato as it grows. And you can see, you know, in this growing of the tomatoes this way, as I mound that up and create what I'll call a saucer, a big saucer, it really allows for nice deep watering, and you can fill up that whole saucer. There's even some debate there on how much you should water. Wait till the leaves curl a little bit, and then you don't get, or then it, you know, signals to the plant that you should be, it's fall and they'll produce more fruit. See what I mean? You can just go down this huge rabbit hole. What I do like is just kind of picking and cleaning and filling that saucer up, so you get one nice big drenching here and there. And then which is kind of fun, the one I'm filling right now, watch that in this video and then you'll understand. Here it is. What well-drained soil means. When it's all loosened up, you can just watch the soil or the water go down, and just like that, it's gone. Working on some Romas, which are a determinate. We'll keep talking tomatoes on there, but that's a little bit there. Let's switch over to working on my favorite thing, the water line. Finally, the last little bit. I get a big kick out of that. I started to repair this line maybe 5-6 years ago, and finally getting back to it. I had some little critter part of it, so I thought I had fixed it, and yet there was another hole, so off to turn it back on. And what didn't get caught in the video was me flipping the line off because there was another hole in it, so I had to add another piece and dig it in, and I had a nice audience watching me work. Usually happens, but Shell went over and turned it back on, and success. We have water in the garden, so we don't need the 5 hoses all the way from the house. And the last little project of the day before the storm rolls in is putting those potatoes in the ground. Yes, long overdue, I already mentioned that. I carried over the last of the compost from the compost bin, a little bit of peat moss, stirred it all up with the soil that was there, and kind of built one big mound. So yes, it's not hills of potatoes, or maybe it's one long hill of potato, but I really like this method. Nice loose soil. I had cut the potatoes the week before, so the cut side was nice and leathery. That helps kind of minimize rot, and they all will come up. And you can see how nice and loose the soil is. They just pop right in. Finish planting, and then it's kind of covered in a trench. That whole long trench makes it really easy for watering. It just is really nice because you can fill that whole trench. Potatoes also like a lot of water, so it's easy to do that. Favorite fertilizer is a little Sustain turkey manure, composted, and wonderful organic fertilizer. Just doing a nice big top dressing. You can start to see the rain coming in, and I think that's gonna almost do it for the day. How nice and dark that soil is. Top dressing that, top dress the pumpkins, and it'll be a day. Thanks.
Are we good then?
We are good.
Grab your beer.
See how she is? Grab your beer, just like that. Oh, that damn camera.
Oh shit.
Well, we didn't get as much done as we thought we were. The rain showed up early. But water line is fixed, yay. We'll get the weeds another time. See ya.